What's going on, everybody? Welcome to another episode of the Air Flow podcast. I'm your host, Rickey Thomas. Um, it's a blessing to be here for another episode. It's I just reflect back to 2024, sorry, 2023, and the interesting part about 2023 was that I didn't do that many episodes. I went back and looked at how many episodes I did, and I realized that I got so far just involved with work and everything else that I didn't really keep up with what I needed to do with this. So I wanted to come out a little different in 2024. Um, we've launched the Airflow podcast as a part of the Billionaire Flow YouTube channel. So go check us out. We're on YouTube, so you can look us up at Millionaire Flow. And we're under the podcast section there, and Airflow podcast is listed there. So we'll still be at the same places we were before in terms of any podcast platforms out there, like iHeartRadio. We're on there now, Apple Podcasts, things like that. So please be willing to check us out there. Like, share, subscribe. I'm really trying to grow the community, so I can't do that if I don't have, people listening. So if any of the content that you hear is great and you like it, please take a look. Just take a little bit of time just to share it and like it. You also find on our Billionaire Flow YouTube channel. Um, it's a little different because I'm always of the belief of uplifting and inspiring and encouraging, motivating, things like that from different levels, spiritually, mentally, physically, financially. I love to laugh. I love to joke. But I think if folks have listened to my episodes previously, they know that I try to bring content that is going to push the needle in the positive direction. So, while I listen to, Club Shay Shay and, other great podcasts out there to get different kinds of things, I'm always going to be a person that's going to go for positivity. In the midst of everything that's going on in the world, we all need a bit of motivation and inspiration. So that's what this is about. So if you're a first time listener, thank you for joining. I appreciate it, and I'm welcome all feedback. And that's one of the things I'm really excited about with YouTube, because we're really trying to grow our YouTube platform, and being able to link the two of these together from a podcast perspective and the YouTube channel was a pretty big deal. So I definitely wanted to make sure that we can get started in 2021, beginning with that. So I'm leveraging a different platform, and it's going to take some tweaks to make it right. So I just ask you all to bear with me as we continue to go through this journey. But this year, I'm really pushing to get back to a weekly sort of episodic format and cadence, and I've got plenty to share. And it's not just me. I also came to this platform because I want to get back to really doing more of the interviews and bringing people on who have great stories to share, great information to share. So that there's a lot of things that I've got to do, and I've got to really push myself to do it so that I can make sure that I'm bringing forth what God has given me to bring forth. And that's why I started the podcast. So there's two things that I'll share, and then we'll get into what our episode is about today. But for those that are first time, since we're starting off a new year, I just want to kind of level set things. Billionaire Flow is a apparel brand that and the name, the logo that God gave me back in 2019. It was October 2019. And I took that and I got a license for it to have that logo and that design. So it is trademarked under, for me, I have that name trademark. And I did that because, with Billionaire Flow, I was in prayer for a while. I was in a time of fasting and praying and really just asking God, what do I need to do? Because before that, I had it. My wife and I were doing a t-shirt company called Kingdom Designs, and we were doing custom vinyl shirts, hoodies, things like that. And I still have a lot of the equipment, and so I wanted to get to a place where I create a brand, and what I wanted it to be kingdom based. And I wanted it to be focused on really when people see it, they think of themselves, they see themselves, they feel like a billionaire. So it's a play, and you can kind of see the hat, but it's a play on, the word billionaire, except it's spelled differently. So, it's for those that are not watching this on YouTube and are listening, it's BILLIONHEIR, billionaire, and then flow. And the flow part was more of, flowing in the blessing that was passed down from God to Abraham and his sons Isaac and Jacob, and all their descendants. And once you become part of the kingdom, you become heir. And as an heir, the flow is really, you're entitled to flow in everything that God has promised for those descendants of Abraham. So that's where the it came from. And it's really, it's not about, I know a lot of people say, oh, billionaire, money, you see, and there's some great brands out there. I think there's the millions, billions, trillions, which I love that. And I think the financial piece is always a part of the blessing, the abundance that comes, but it's so much more than that. It is about carrying yourself and living like an heir. So when you wear it, you're an ambassador for the kingdom. And, as much as I love my sports teams, shout out to the U of M Wolverines winning the national championship. We got one. And shout out to my Detroit Lions, who, God, to win the division was big. So, that I'm very excited as a fan of both teams growing up in Michigan and being able to see them get back to a sense of dominance and winning mindset. So it was exciting to see that Wolverines winning the championship was very big. And then seeing Detroit playing at the level they're playing, I think they've got just as much of a chance over the next year or so to win the Super Bowl or get there. So it's exciting times. If we can get our Tigers and Pistons and Red Wings back to kind of prominence, then it'll be a great day, a great time in Detroit. But I know they're celebrating the Detroit Lions, and the state of Michigan is celebrating the Michigan Wolverines. So I will get back on track here, but that's where Billionaire Flow came from. Another time and during prayer, I was asking God, about just talking about podcasting. And I told my wife, I said, I really had this vision from God about creating a podcast. And I know a lot of people were doing it. And I was like, yeah, there's a lot of people out there. And I did some research and started looking up equipment and different aspects of um, different aspects of actually uh, doing what it takes to do a podcast. And so, I went back to God and I'm like, what would be a good name for it that really embodies what I'm trying to do? And so it just kind of linked to the brand, and this airflow, and it's a play on words because people hear, you're thinking of a podcast, something that's going to be heard, out in people's cars. They're listening to it on their cell phones. They're listening to it, in different venues, but it's talking, it's air, so air is flowing. But it's again playing on the word air as ATIR. So again, making sure that it's kingdom based, but it's tip strategies. It's just talking to people, inspiration, motivation, as I said. So they're all linked together, but that is the real purpose of the podcast. And that's why I'm really rededicating myself for 2024 to do what I need to do, what I've been called to do, and make this my focus. Now, between this and the apparel, my I would love for this to be what propels my family to the next level. I know that God has called me to do it, so He's going to give me everything I need to be able to do it. And I would love to get to the place. I really believe to get to the place where I can do it at a level of, some of the big time podcasters, people who are out there doing YouTube channels. I'm not about creating viral, break the internet type moments. But I want people that when they walk away from this show, whether they're guests or listeners, that they feel like they have something they can and kind of hold on to something they can relate to what I'm talking about. So, or what the guests are talking about. So that was kind of the 10-minute intro. As we start out this new year. So we'll get into what this episode is about. Um, I call it Rise, and Rise is basically reclaiming identity and shattering expectations. And the reason, and I'll get more into the detail of the title, but again, as I mentioned, the acronym for Rise is reclaiming identity and shattering expectations. And so where that really came from is just I started recognizing some different things about myself. Um, and I think this kind of played into why it was difficult for me to continue to build upon a podcast. Sometimes it's challenging when I look at some of the successes I've had in life, and career, in my career, and just different things. And it sort of stops me from going to another level. And it's me, it's not anybody else that's doing that. And that thing is, and what I've I guess found a term for it is imposter syndrome. And for those that don't know what imposter syndrome is, it's I guess it's defined as a psychological pattern, where basically as an individual you doubt your accomplishments, and you have fear that you're basically be exposed as a fraud. Like, you don't know what you're talking about. You're not good. And it basically stops you from, it can be debilitating. It can be crippling. It can be something that could hold you down, and stop you from moving forward. So, and there's been a lot of individuals who experience it. One of the, kind of the last person that I've heard say something about having imposter syndrome is, the viral internet food critic, and he's more than that. He was an MMA fighter, but he does a lot of great work. And I've reached out to him through Instagram. I'm going to try to see if I can get him on the podcast, but his name is Keith Lee. Um, and he mentioned that, he's got extreme imposter syndrome. He's not sure why he's being blessed the way he's blessed. And, I heard him say that. And it's interesting because I was already going to do an episode about imposter syndrome because that's what I really wanted to end the year last year with that. But I just didn't. So I came back into this year and I said in the first episode, I want to do that. But in between that time, I heard him say that. And, God was just showing me something, and just to understand. So the whole idea around imposter syndrome came about in 1978. So it was interesting because I was born in 1978. So just to know that that's where it kind of, I don't think it started then, obviously, but I think that's where they actually coined that term, of imposter syndrome. It is not considered a mental disorder, but it is. They say it's a common phenomenon amongst, um, high achievers. So when you look at people who have imposter syndromes, and some people may say, "Well, I don't think I'm a high achiever," but that is a part of that process, right? You kind of have these symptoms of like self doubt. Um, I'm a very spiritual person. I have a great connection with God, and I definitely know that my blessings and everything that I have come from Him. But for some people, they have symptoms where it's, attributing their success to luck, or they feel like they have imposter syndrome based off of a fear of not meeting expectations. So again, that goes back to the whole title of what this, podcast episode is about. And then, it's one of those things where I'm really trying to make sure that I don't limit myself from what God has called me to do and who He's called me to be. And I think that's really what the impact of everything that I felt, especially over the last couple of years. But this year was one of the big. I'm sorry, last year was one of the big kind of points in my life where I really identified that. Um, you start thinking about the impacts, and it impacts, job performance, my relationships, And it can drive you to have mental health issues. So, a lot of people who go through imposter syndrome, you have sort of anxiety and depression. Um, I can just tell you, just in my job, my job, I'm blessed to have the position that I have and working, doing what I've been able to do, and I've been successful in that. Um, but last year, towards the end of first quarter of last year, I got promoted to a different position. Um, and it was interesting because I got it and I didn't get super excited about it because it was like, am I really supposed to, I start questioning, am I supposed to be in this position? And that's that whole mindset of self-doubt, even though I know when I step back and look, I've been working very hard. And it hasn't been perfect. And I haven't, I've made some mistakes, but I do hold myself to a high regard, and I am very difficult, hard on myself. And I think that for me is has been one of the challenges because it's like I always want to do well, but then I'm like, if I continue to move up, then that puts me into a greater place of exposure, and then if I mess up, then it's going to be like, oh, he really shouldn't have been here. He wasn't qualified and things like that. So there's been a lot of times where I felt that way, and not just with the job I just got, but in my whole journey. Like God's hand has moved through my career. He's really moved through my career and helped me. The reason why I'm where I am, and it started with faith and a prayer, just to say, God, the needs of my family, the desires of my heart when it comes to my career, and I turn it over to you. And the change had to start internally, but ever since then, I've been able to move up to different layer levels, and see promotions where increases come from, financially, different things, titles, all that stuff. And it's great, but it's still, there was always this point of, am I supposed to be here? And it almost made me feel bad because it's like I'm questioning God for blessing me, but I asked for it, but I'm questioning, like, am I really the right person? So that was definitely a challenge. And I'm still working through it. More so now, it's kind of, my mind is transitioning from really corporate America to entrepreneurship. And I think that's another area for me. When you start talking about, how I felt for job performances, I started thinking about just, being an entrepreneur, starting a business. And, my wife and I, we've done so many different things. We've built so many things, and there's always that thought in the back of my mind, like, what if I do blow up from this, from the entrepreneurial thing? And there's that mindset of, oh my goodness, like, people are going to want to see me and this, that, and the other. Even with the podcast, one of the main reasons why I didn't do video recordings of my podcast, and I do have a few videos out there, but the reason why I didn't continue to do it is, like, people are going to see my face. And if I offend somebody, and you start second guessing things, I'm like, man, or you get too big, and you just start thinking, like, people see you and you mess up or you make a mistake, and then now you're gonna, lose it all. And it just got to a place where I was like, okay, I'm thinking about the wrong things. I've got to focus on what God has promised me, what God has told me to do, and be obedient. No matter what happens, there's always gonna be people that's gonna disagree with you. You can say, the most positive thing. And I posted something on Facebook. I think it might have been last week or the week before, and it was a meme. It was a picture of a glass of water, and you know, I said, "Watch this. I can get people to argue over this." And I just put the picture up there, and then, as a joke, but people were giving me all kind of things like, "Well," or I said it was a cup of water. Somebody looked at it like it was a glass of water, and then somebody was like, "Well, it's actually a glass of Sprite," and then, it was just all kind of things going back and forth. But no matter what you do, no matter what, there's always going to be people who will troll you, that just want to argue for the sake of arguing. And I think the best thing to do is, if you know who you are and you know what you've been called to do, I think that's just what the important part about it is because if I continue to limit myself, personally, because of what I think other people are going to think or other people are going to feel, and this whole imposter syndrome feeling that I have at times, then I'm never going to reach the heights that I'm supposed to reach. I'm going to put a ceiling on my life where I shouldn't have a ceiling. It should be an open sky of just things that I can continue to rise and rise and rise until God tells me this is where you're at. Um, and I have to understand that that target is always going to be moving. So, that's I'll address the Cat Williams and interview on Club Shay Shay. He's talking about different entertainers, and I heard somebody say the worst thing you can do in a situation like that is respond. You know, don't give it the energy. And so when I think about if somebody did have something to say about me, if somebody had something negative to bring about concerning something that I've done or whatever, and not to say that I don't do anything, I won't do anything wrong or I won't mess up, I won't say something wrong, but you know it'd be little stuff, the way I look, the way I talk. People just want to be people just want to be critical, and I think from that perspective, that's why I really have to get to a place of understanding that if I'm doing this from my heart based off of what God is telling me, then I can't worry about all that. I've got to be I've got to be secure in my relationship with God and secure in understanding that my purpose is bigger than somebody else's opinion. So that's really where I wanted to go with on that piece of it. When I talk about job, talk about businesses. So I'm going to continue to push this thing forward. I'm going to continue to grow my brand. Not worry about what other people may think. In terms of, now, obviously, from a customer perspective, from a listener perspective, I care about what my viewers think, and I want them to offer feedback, and maybe some of the ways that I can do things a little better. But I'm never going to apologize for the content that I get, because it comes from listening to God and my relationship. And then the people that I bring on here, I bring them on because I understand that the information that they have, while it's also it's usually always something that I'm going to love and really want to use for my own self and my family. If it's going to help me, I know it's going to help somebody else. So I always want to share that kind of information. So again, that's why, the goal is to continue to grow that. When you look at relationship strains, and just and how an imposter syndrome, I think I felt like that even before I got married, before I got engaged. I was like, man, being a husband, taking on a wife, the responsibility of a family, and I've always wanted to have a family. And just as it got to that place, it was like, man, am I really supposed to be married? Am I supposed to be with this woman? Do I deserve her? And I have kids, and you look at them like, man, am I really going to be able to be the father that I need to be? And you kind of get scared about, I don't want to do this and I don't want to do that because I just, I don't know if I deserve these folks. Do I deserve a wife? Do I deserve my family? Should I just be alone? And there were times where I felt like that, even since I've had kids, and my kids are almost grown. The youngest is 13, the oldest is 20. I've got a 17-year-old. So they're not babies anymore. But there's times I look at them like, man, I'm proud of them. And it's like, how did I deserve this? Or do I deserve this? And it just causes things, because when you have those when you feel imposter syndrome, there's just those times and opportunities where it's like, it didn't have to be that way. Some of the things that you say, some of the way you react to certain situations, it's like that wasn't even necessary for you to do that. Um, or it's okay to speak positive about this, or it's okay to speak positive about that, and not have to worry about the backlash if you're feeling happy, you're feeling excited about your wife. I remember there was a time where just, you know, giving my wife attention, on social media and doing certain things, and you get people sending messages like, "Oh, you doing this and that." I was like, I want people to think I'm trying to be fake or phony. I'm like, why do I care? Why do I care what they think if that's how I really feel? And I do. When I post stuff about my wife or just in general how I'm appreciative of her, you know, I don't do it for a show, but I want to make sure it's known public the same way as I want to make sure it's known private, and not self sabotage things. And I think that's another key term that comes with imposter syndrome is really self sabotaging. Um, you're blocking your own blessings essentially. The last part is in terms of the impact that you see is the mental health, and anxiety and depression, and just not feeling like you want to do anything that's going to take you to the next level. Like, I'm just going to stay in this little bubble that I'm in right now and just kind of get through each day, because again, I don't want to move in a place that um I just don't want to move into a place where it's going to bring attention to me, to where I can potentially look like a failure or look like I've made a mistake or something like that. So, just going back to understanding that, that fear of feeling like you are a fraud, like, dude, you're fake, and just doubting all the personal, like, I don't want to tell people of things that I've done well or that I've gotten an accomplishment for, work and stuff like that. There's been times when I wouldn't even tell my wife, like, oh, this happened, I'll be all excited. I'm like, I don't even want to share that. You know, it's crazy. It's crazy. Yeah, but I'll do it for my kids because I love sharing if my kids do something well. And it's not a bragging type of thing, but I think when it comes to just myself, it's just that impact that I had. Um, I think just understanding and interesting in the studies there's a study that says that, obviously it affects all genders, but it says the studies show women might experience it more intensely. Um, and just really looking at why this is important for me and why this is even a topic is because that is having imposter syndrome is totally the opposite of what God has intended for his children. God wants to bless us. God wants to give us the desires of our heart. If we're doing the things that we are called to do, if we're walking in purpose, God really wants to make sure you have it. So it's really a trick of the enemy to keep us down and make us feel that way, because it's like, okay, I'm going to put this ceiling on you, on myself. I'm not going to go further. So I'm not going to reach the purpose that I want to be at. And the enemy is cool with that. And he's like, that's where I want you to do, because he knows where you're at. He knows where the potential that you can have. And he wants to destroy that and still, that sense of joy, that sense of accomplishment, just that sense of promoting, moving up. So for me, it's always one of those things where I go back to say, I feel like I was being hypocritical because I'm saying I love the Lord and I'm thankful for my blessings on one hand, but on the other hand, I'm like, I'm scared to receive these things. I'm scared to do this stuff. I think I mentioned in another podcast episode, I had been I had a vision board. I've had a picture posted of a Tesla, and I know people have their own personal opinions about Teslas, but I had it posted. I've been looking at them for about 5 years now. And I was just going back and forth about it. It was like, oh, look, the prices of them. Like, God, I want to be able to buy one of those, and this, that, and the other. And that was just my whole mindset. And I would watch videos about them. Like, okay, when I get one, I'll understand what to do in this situation. How to handle them. How to take care of them. How to use the computer. How to drive. I did everything to figure it out, so that when I got it, I'll be ready to drive it day one. Um, and I kept believing for it, kept believing for it. So, for Father's Day last year, my wife came to me, or right before Father's Day, she came to me and she showed me where she put the down payment in, and placed the order for a Tesla. And as soon as that happened, I literally had I had this anxiety come over me, and it came over me because I'm like, wait a minute, why am I getting that? Why did she do this for me? Like, I don't deserve this. Like, and I instead of being excited, as truly excited as I should have been, I felt pressure and weight on me. I'm like, well, why is this? Why am I having, why am I feeling this way? And it was the weirdest thing because I had been looking at this thing for years, and it's like, here it is. My wife is giving it to me. And I asked her, I said, what made you get that for you? She was like, well, she was like, I was, she was joking, but she was like, I was tired of hearing about it. But then the flip side of it, she was like, but she had prayed about it and God told her to do it. And even then, it's like, I trust the God in her. But even then I was like, I don't deserve this. You know, I'm not the perfect husband or father, and I'm not the perfect person. Why am I deserving this? But I'm sitting here, basically down in myself, and my wife is like excited about she blessed me with this vehicle, and a few weeks later it came, and I remember going to pick it up. And again that day I got it and I sat in it and I was like, God, this is crazy. And it's a vehicle, it's a material thing. But it also showed me that if God can use my wife to bless me, and knowing how I felt about something like that, the whole idea of imposter syndrome, and the whole idea that I don't deserve this, and it is just it's just counterintuitive to really my faith in understanding that God wants to bless me the same way I want to bless my family, wants to bless us, and give us everything. And so it kind of drove me to a place where I was like, man, God, I want to be able to do something big for her. And already wanted to do it. Like, I want to get her out of corporate America. I want her to be able to do the things that she desires to do. If it's a car that she wants, I want to be able to bless her with that. And it's always been that way. And I've been that way, but I felt bad because it's like, I'm getting this car. And originally I said, God, I don't want to get this car until I can get my wife away from corporate America. I want her to be able to focus on the things that she really wants to focus on, and use her skills, outside of the corporate world, and build her own businesses and things like that. And so I was like, I don't want to get a car until then. Now I'd already asked God for the car. I already asked for it, but I put a condition on it. And then when I threw my imposter syndrome, it was like, I don't even deserve this because I didn't even do this. So now I got these conditions that I'm asking God, and God is like, look, I can take care of that and all this stuff, all the other stuff. You just got to believe. So, I say all that to say it's something like that that really drove me to like dig into the whole imposter syndrome thing and say, why is that? What is it? And do some research on it. And I would recommend a lot of us to really take the time to do research on that, and seek help from a mental health professional. I'm very big about that. There's things in my life that I know that I would benefit from mental health professionals, and it's okay. I think we have to be more open in our community. Say our community, the African American community, but just our community as a whole, to really leverage mental health professionals. And it may not be that you have something that's clinically wrong with you. It could just be having somebody who is outside of your home, outside of any close relationship, that can look at your situation, with with a professional viewpoint, and give you pointers, and help kind of navigate you through things. And so I would also promote, there's different books out there. There's different things. There's a book by Eileen Kennedy Moore called The Imposter Syndrome Remedy. There's another book called The Secret Thoughts of Successful Women. And this is for my female listeners out there. But it's called The Secret Thoughts of Successful Women by Valerie Young. And both of those books, doing some research on them, they both really focus and help um, guide you through understanding how to deal with imposter syndrome, and it's a real thing. So, um, for those that think that it's just another one of those uh, mental health diseases or something, I mean, it's real. Mental health is real. I have been I've experienced some of that personally. I've experienced some of that with family. And I just want to encourage everybody, as believers, one of the main things that we need to make sure of that we're doing um, for ourselves and really just doing to understand where God has called us to be the people that we're supposed to be. It's just important to not allow the enemy to take control of our mind, um, and have us face this level of self doubt, like he can do. Um, and I say that because again, I sit and look at myself. I sit and try to understand why my life has been the way it is, why some things haven't manifested the way I thought they were. And a lot of it sometimes it's because of my own fears that I see more so have come about because of the imposter syndrome that I felt. And not to say that there's also outside forces. There's always things like the enemy coming in and trying to put things around you to take you away from what your purpose is. But all those things combined, it's easy to get into a funk and get into the mindset that I can't move forward because I don't want to give people the mindset, the opportunity to poke, throw darts at me or to um, troll me or make fun of me. So I'm just going to not do the thing that I was called to do to save myself the potential embarrassment or, the potential anxiety that I may feel. And it's a real thing. So I just encourage everybody again to take time to check, see if look up what imposter syndrome is. Check it out. Make sure that you understand. And if it's not too great, but if you know somebody who's like that, somebody who you're always like, hey, you're doing great, great accomplishments, this, that, and the other, and they're like always like, no, I'm not. I just got lucky, or no, that's no. It's time for them to rise. And rise, like I said, is reclaiming identity, shattering expectations. Um, and it really the acronym for rise, it's powerful, but it also kind of encapsulates the journey from struggling with imposter syndrome to really overcoming it. So that's where, reclaiming identity is when you're, going through the struggle with imposter syndrome. And then the shattering expectations is overcoming it. The expectations is shattering your expectations for yourself, the limited expectation that you're setting, and it's really seeing yourself for who God is seeing, who God sees you as the people who love you see you as. So that is going to wrap up this episode. I pray that everybody who has a chance to watch or to listen to it, I hope you all are really able to gather some good nuggets from it. I definitely would love to hear any feedback that anybody may have. And there are other book suggestions, if there's other people who are dealing with imposter syndrome and it's causing things, please be willing to share that. We would I would love for everybody to be able to heal and reach the place that they're supposed to be. And that's what this podcast is about. This podcast is about building people, motivating them, getting them out to the place where God has created them to. It's not where I personally want you to go. It's where God purposed for you to go because he knows what he created you for. So as I always end every episode, um, as a kingdom heir, you were created to flow. So flow on. Thank you guys. Have a blessed evening, day, whenever you get a chance to watch this. And please check us out. Billionaireflow.com is the apparel website. So please go and check that out. That's going to be in the description. Also, Airflow Podcast is a part of our YouTube channel. We also have the airflowpodcast.com website. We're also on Facebook, facebook.com/airflow podcast. We're also on Facebook for the apparel brand. So all these things are tied together. I am Rickey Thomas. So for those who haven't seen me, this is me. And I just I'm blessed to be able to do this. And I pray that if there's one person who is able to get help from any episode that I do, then I'm doing my job. So I just believe that this is what I'm called to do, and I'm going to continue to do it, and I'm going to get better, and it's going to get better. It's going to look better. It's going to sound better. I'm very much so. I'm not a perfectionist, but I'm always about continuous improvement. So I'm going to go ahead and end it there. I love you guys. Be blessed, and we'll talk next time on Airflow. See you.